The tall glass building stood in the middle of the busy city. Every morning, people rushed inside with files in their hands, coffee in their cups, and worry on their faces. On the top floor of that building was the office of Mr. Karim, the CEO of a big company. He was a man known for his hard work, his discipline, and his success. People respected him, but they also feared him, because he was always serious and busy. His office was filled with important papers, charts, and a large table where he made decisions that affected hundreds of lives. That day was no different. The clock ticked slowly as Karim read through long reports. His phone rang with calls, and his computer screen was filled with numbers. His secretary kept coming in with updates. He hardly had time to look outside the window. The world outside was moving, but his world was trapped between deadlines and targets. In the middle of this routine, a small sound came to his door. It was not the strong knock of an employee or the quick tap of an assistant. It was soft, almost hesitant. Karim lifted his head in confusion. At first, he thought maybe he had imagined it. He went back to his papers, but then the sound came again, a little knock, light as if someone was unsure whether they should enter. He frowned and looked up. "Come in," he said, his voice firm. Slowly, the heavy door opened, but what he saw made him forget his files. Standing there was a small child, no more than 4 years old. The boy had big curious eyes and tiny hands that still clutched the doorknob. His clothes were simple, his shoes a little worn, and his hair was slightly messy, as if he had run there in a hurry. For a moment, Karim blinked, wondering if this was some kind of mistake. Children did not belong in corporate offices, especially not on the top floor where decisions worth millions were made. He leaned back in his chair and studied the boy. "What are you doing here?" Karim asked, his tone softer now. The child looked up, his eyes shining with a strange courage. "Can you be my friend?" he asked, his voice innocent and direct. The words struck Karim like lightning. For a second, he did not know how to respond. He had heard many requests in his life, requests for promotions, for money, for contracts, for favors, but never something so pure, so unexpected. A child, standing in front of him, asking for nothing more than friendship. Karim put his pen down slowly. "Your friend," he repeated, almost to himself. The boy nodded. "Yes. I don't have many friends. You look like you could be my friend." The CEO, who had faced interviews, negotiations, and board meetings without blinking, now felt strangely nervous. He glanced at the door, expecting his secretary to appear any moment, explaining why this child was here. But no one came. It was just him and the little boy, in the middle of his office filled with silence. "Where are your parents?" Karim asked carefully. "They are working," the boy replied simply. "They are always busy. I came here because I just wanted a friend." There was no complaint in his voice, only honesty. The way he spoke made Karim's heart stir. He remembered his own childhood, the times when he had wanted his father to play with him but instead had found him buried in work. The boy's words touched an old memory that Karim had long buried under years of ambition. Karim leaned forward, studying the child. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, still half in disbelief. The boy shook his head. "No. But you looked kind. So I knocked." Karim was silent. No one had called him kind in a long time. He was known for his strength, for his sharp mind, for his power in the business world, but not for kindness. Yet, here was a child who saw something in him that even he did not see in himself anymore. He gestured toward a chair across from him. "Come, sit." The boy climbed into the large leather chair, his legs too short to touch the ground. He swung them gently, smiling as if he had already found comfort. Karim watched him with curiosity. In all his years of running a company, this was the most unusual meeting he had ever had. For a few moments, the boy looked around the office, his eyes wide with wonder. He pointed at the tall bookshelves, the framed certificates on the wall, and the big city view from the window. "Your room is very big," he said with a grin. Kareem smiled faintly. It had been a long time since someone had called his office a room. To others, it was a workplace, a symbol of authority. But to a child, it was just a room, simple and ordinary. The innocence of the boy made Kareem's shoulders relax. The weight of his responsibilities seemed lighter, just for that moment. He realized how strange it was, a man with so much power in the city, yet he could not ignore the request of a little boy who only wanted a friend. The clock kept ticking, the phone kept buzzing, but Kareem let them be. For once, he was not rushing. He was not thinking about numbers or deadlines. He was just looking at a child who had entered his life so unexpectedly. The boy leaned forward, his small hands resting on the table. "So, will you be my friend?" he asked again, his voice filled with hope. Kareem's throat felt tight. He had given many answers in his life, quick and confident, but this question made him hesitate. Friendship was not something that could be signed like a contract or planned like a project. It was a gift, and this child was offering it with no conditions. At that moment, Kareem understood something. The knock on his door was not just a sound, it was a call, a reminder of something he had forgotten. A reminder that beyond success, beyond power, there was a world of simple connections, of kindness, of human warmth. And as he looked at the boy's hopeful eyes, Kareem felt something inside him shift, something he could not yet explain. That day was no ordinary day. It was the beginning of a story he never expected, one that would change his life in ways he had never imagined. The boy sat comfortably in the large chair, his tiny legs swinging back and forth as if he had finally found a safe place. His wide eyes were full of curiosity, and his little hands kept touching the smooth surface of the big table in front of him. The office, which usually felt heavy with seriousness, now seemed lighter, almost like a new space filled with innocent laughter. Kareem leaned back in his chair, still studying the child who had walked into his life without warning. He was used to people coming into his office with long faces, with papers to sign, or with problems to solve. But never before had someone entered with such simple words, words that had touched his heart in a way he could not explain. "What is your name?" Kareem finally asked, his voice much softer than it usually was. "My name is Ali," the boy replied proudly, his smile spreading across his face. "I am 4 years old." Kareem nodded, repeating the name quietly to himself. "Ali. That is a good name." The boy's eyes sparkled. "What is your name?" he asked, tilting his head like a curious bird. For a moment, Kareem was taken aback. He was the CEO of a large company, a man whose name was printed on documents, displayed on news articles, and spoken in boardrooms. Everyone in the building knew his name. But this small boy sitting in front of him had no idea who he was. Somehow, that thought made him smile. "My name is Kareem," he answered gently. Ali repeated it slowly, as if memorizing it. "Kareem. That sounds nice." Kareem chuckled. It had been years since anyone had spoken his name in such a pure way, without formality, without pressure. Just as a friend would. Ali leaned forward, placing his tiny elbows on the big desk. "So, Kareem, what do you do in this big room?" The question caught Kareem off guard. He opened his mouth to give the usual answer that he ran a company, that he made decisions, that he was responsible for hundreds of employees, but the words felt strange on his tongue. He looked at the boy's innocent face and realized that explaining numbers, profits, and losses would mean nothing to him. "I work here," Kareem said simply. "I talk to people, I read papers, and I try to make things better for this company." Ali blinked, his small face serious for a moment. Then he giggled. "That sounds boring." Kareem laughed, a sound that surprised even himself. It was a laugh he had not heard from his own mouth in a very long time. The walls of his office, which often held only silence or the stress of meetings, now echoed with the gentle sound of a child's laughter mixed with his own. Ali continued, his voice cheerful. I like playing with toys. I like drawing pictures. I like running outside. Do you play, Kareem? The question hit Kareem like a wave. When was the last time he had played? When was the last time he had done something just for joy, without thinking about schedules, deadlines, or responsibilities? He tried to remember, but his mind went blank. No, Kareem admitted after a pause. I don't play much anymore. Ali tilted his head again, looking at him with surprise. Why not? Playing is fun. You should try it. Maybe then you won't look so serious all the time. Kareem felt a strange warmth in his chest. A 4-year-old was giving him advice that sounded more truthful than anything he had heard in a long time. The boy's innocence was like a mirror, showing him the life he had forgotten. For years, Kareem had built walls around himself, protecting his image as a strong leader, hiding his softer side. But this child had walked right through those walls with just a few words. As they sat together, Kareem noticed the boy's shoes. They were slightly worn, the edges frayed, as if they had been used for many long walks. His small shirt had a button missing, but his smile was brighter than anything money could buy. Where do you live, Ali? Kareem asked gently. Near here, Ali replied. In a small house. My mama and Baba both work. They are always tired. Sometimes I play alone. Sometimes I wait for them. Today I saw this big building, and I thought maybe there is a friend inside. Kareem's heart sank at the boy's words. He could see the truth in them. The child was not complaining, he was just telling his reality. But within those simple sentences, Kareem heard the loneliness of a child who longed for attention, for company, for warmth. And you chose me? Kareem asked, still in disbelief. Ali nodded without hesitation. Yes. Because you looked like you needed a friend too. Those words were like a key, unlocking a door inside Kareem that had been shut for years. He had always thought of himself as surrounded by people, employees, assistants, partners. But in truth, he had been alone. People respected him, but they were afraid of him. They listened to him, but no one really sat across the table and spoke to him without fear or agenda. This boy, this little stranger, had seen something that no one else had seen, his quiet loneliness. For a long moment, Kareem said nothing. He simply looked at Ali, his mind full of thoughts. The sound of the ticking clock filled the room, but for once it did not feel like pressure. It felt like a reminder that sometimes, in the middle of ordinary hours, extraordinary things could happen. Ali broke the silence, his small hands reaching across the desk. So, will you be my friend? Kareem's lips curved into a gentle smile. Yes, Ali. I will be your friend. The boy clapped his tiny hands together, his joy filling the room like sunshine. Good. Then we can talk and play and laugh. That's what friends do. Kareem nodded, his eyes softening. For the first time in many years, he felt something shift inside him. His heart, which had been heavy with stress and ambition, now felt lighter. A 4-year-old had reminded him of the simplest truth that friendship is not about power, money, or status. It is about being present, about listening, about sharing small joys. As the boy continued to talk, Kareem listened. He listened not as a CEO, not as a leader, but as a human being. Ali told him about his favorite toy car, about how he liked the color blue, about how he sometimes drew the sun with a smiling face because he believed even the sun could be happy. Kareem found himself smiling, nodding, and even laughing at the boy's stories. His secretary peeked into the room once, surprised to see her usually stern boss sitting with a child, but Kareem waved her away. For once, nothing else mattered, not the files, not the phone calls, not the endless meetings. What mattered was this moment, this unexpected gift of innocence. By the time Ali stood up to leave, promising he would come again, Kareem felt as though something had awakened inside him. The boy's words, simple yet powerful, echoed in his mind, "You looked like you needed a friend too." And Kareem knew, deep in his heart, that the child was right. That day, in a world full of responsibilities and achievements, a little boy had walked in with nothing but honesty and left behind a spark of friendship that would grow into something far greater than either of them could imagine. The next morning, Kareem sat in his office as usual, surrounded by his papers and reports. The building was buzzing with workers, phones ringing, and meetings scheduled one after another. Everything appeared the same as it always had. But inside Kareem, something had changed. The memory of the little boy, Ali, still lingered in his mind. He could still hear the boy's soft voice saying, "You looked like you needed a friend too." Those words had not left him. They followed him home, they followed him during dinner, and even when he lay in bed, they echoed in the silence of his thoughts. For years, he had convinced himself that he was fine being busy, fine being alone. But that one sentence had broken through the walls he had built around his heart. The following days went by quickly, but Kareem found himself waiting, almost hoping, to hear that soft knock on his office door again. He caught himself glancing at the entrance now and then, as if expecting the small figure to appear at any moment. And then, one afternoon, when the sun was casting golden rays through the tall windows, the familiar sound returned, a gentle, hesitant knock. Kareem's lips curved into a smile before he even spoke. "Come in," he said warmly. The door opened, and there he was, Ali, with his bright eyes and wide smile, holding a small toy car in his hand. He walked in confidently this time, as though the office already belonged to him too. "You came back," Kareem said, his voice carrying genuine happiness. "I told you I would," Ali answered, climbing into the big chair again. He placed his toy car on the desk and pushed it around, making soft engine sounds with his mouth. His laughter filled the room like a melody, and Kareem could not help but watch him with fascination. As they spent more time together, Kareem began to learn more about Ali's life. The boy talked about his parents with love but also with a touch of sadness. His father worked at a construction site, and his mother worked long shifts as a cleaner. They left early in the morning and came back late at night, often too tired to talk or play. Ali never complained, but Kareem could feel the loneliness hidden between his words. Sometimes, Ali said quietly while rolling his toy car back and forth, "I sit by the window and wait. I wait to see if Mama will come early, but most of the time she doesn't. That's why I thought maybe I could find a friend outside." Kareem's heart ached. He thought about his own childhood, the times he had waited by the door for his father to return from work. His father had been strict and distant, always reminding him that success required sacrifice. Kareem had grown up believing that love could wait, that family could wait, as long as work was done. And now, as a grown man, he had repeated the same mistake. He had chosen his career over moments with his own children. His chest tightened as he remembered how many times his daughter had asked him to attend her school plays, and he had said no because of a meeting. He remembered how his son had wanted him to play football in the park, but he had promised maybe next week. Next week never came. Looking at Ali, Kareem saw not just a lonely boy but also a reflection of his own children, of his own past, and of the emptiness he had created without realizing it. Ali, too young to understand the storm inside Kareem's heart, continued speaking in his innocent way. "You know, Kareem, friends are important. Friends make you laugh when you are sad. Friends hold your hand when you are scared. You can tell them your secrets, and they won't laugh at you." Kareem listened quietly. Every word the boy said felt like a lesson he had forgotten long ago. The boy was speaking about friendship, but what Kareem heard was a deeper truth: the importance of connection, of love, of time shared with people who mattered. "Do you have friends, Kareem?" Ali suddenly asked, tilting his head. Kareem hesitated. He had colleagues, partners, and people who admired him, but were they friends? Did he have anyone who would sit with him just to talk, not because of business or money? He realized, painfully, that he did not. "No, Ali," Kareem admitted softly. "I don't have many friends." Ali frowned as if this was the saddest thing he had ever heard. "That's okay. You have me now. I'll be your friend." The words, so simple yet so full of warmth, made Kareem's throat tighten. He nodded slowly, his eyes misty. "Yes, Ali. You are my friend." From that day on, Ali became a regular visitor. Sometimes he came after preschool, sometimes on weekends. Each time, Kareem welcomed him with open arms. The boy would bring small drawings he made, sometimes of cars, sometimes of the sun, with a big smile, and he would proudly show them to Kareem, who kept them carefully in a drawer. In return, Kareem began sharing small things with Ali too. He told him stories from his childhood, things he had not spoken about in years. He showed him how to fold paper into airplanes, something he remembered from his school days. When Ali laughed with joy, Kareem felt a part of himself healing. The employees in the office noticed the change. Their boss, once stern and distant, now smiled more often. He greeted them with kindness, and his voice carried warmth instead of cold authority. They whispered among themselves, wondering what had caused this transformation. None of them knew about the little boy who had knocked on the CEO's door and walked straight into his heart. But Kareem knew. Every time he looked at Ali, he felt gratitude. The boy had not only asked for friendship but had also reminded him of his own humanity. One evening, after Ali left, Kareem sat alone in his office and thought deeply. He realized how far he had drifted from the things that truly mattered. In his race to become successful, he had forgotten the value of simple joys, of family dinners, of laughter with friends. He had built tall walls of pride and ambition, but a 4-year-old had broken them with just one knock. That night, when Kareem went home, he did something he had not done in years. He sat at the dinner table with his children, not rushing, not distracted by his phone. He asked them about their day, listened to their stories, and even laughed with them. His wife looked at him in surprise, but her eyes softened with happiness. It was not easy for Kareem to change overnight. Habits built over years are not erased in a day. But inside, his heart had awakened. And it was Ali, with his small hands and big heart, who had lit that spark. Kareem knew one thing for certain: his life would never be the same again. The days slowly turned into weeks, and what had started as an unexpected meeting between a powerful CEO and a lonely little boy began to grow into something much deeper. Kareem found himself looking forward to Ali's visits. His office, once filled only with the sound of typing keyboards, ringing phones, and serious conversations, was now often brightened by the cheerful laughter of a child. It was unusual, almost unbelievable, how quickly the atmosphere had changed. Ali's presence brought a warmth that no one could ignore. The employees who walked past the CEO's office sometimes caught glimpses of the boy sitting on the big chair, his feet dangling in the air, happily telling Kareem stories or showing him his colorful drawings. At first, they were surprised. Some even thought it must be a relative or a special guest. But soon, they noticed how different their boss had become since the boy started visiting. Kareem, who had once been known for his strict nature, now carried a softness in his eyes. He smiled more, greeted his employees with patience, and even listened carefully when they came to him with their problems. He no longer dismissed them with short, hurried answers. Instead, he gave them his time. His assistant, who had worked with him for years, quietly told her colleagues, "He is changing, it's like his heart is lighter now." Ali, without realizing it, was teaching Kareem lessons that no book or business strategy ever could. The boy's small actions carried big meanings. When he pushed his toy car across the CEO's desk, Kareem understood the value of simple playfulness. When he drew the sun with a smiling face, Kareem learned the importance of looking at the world with hope. And when Ali spoke about waiting for his parents, Kareem realized how precious time was, how easily it could slip away while chasing success. One afternoon, Ali walked into the office holding 2 biscuits in his small hand. He climbed onto the chair opposite Kareem and placed 1 biscuit carefully on the desk. "This is for you," he said proudly. Kareem looked at the biscuit, then at the boy's innocent face. No employee had ever brought him a gift without expecting something in return. But here was a child offering half of what little he had, simply because he considered him a friend. Kareem took the biscuit gently, his throat tightening. "Thank you, Ali. This means a lot." Ali grinned. Friends share everything. Those simple words stayed with Kareem. That evening, during a company meeting, he looked at his tired employees and thought of Ali's words again. Friends share everything. For the first time, Kareem decided to make a change in the workplace. Instead of giving a long speech filled with numbers and targets, he stood up and said, "From today, I want us to work not just as colleagues but as a team that supports one another. A company should not only run on profits but also on kindness." The employees looked at each other in surprise. This was not the Kareem they had known before. The man who had once spoken only of deadlines was now speaking of kindness. Some of them smiled, while others nodded slowly, realizing that something good was happening. Kareem began introducing small changes. He reduced unnecessary late hours so employees could spend more time with their families. He arranged small gatherings in the office where people could relax and talk freely. He encouraged teamwork instead of competition, reminding everyone that success was sweeter when shared. The company atmosphere started to shift. People felt less afraid and more connected. For the first time in years, laughter could be heard in the hallways. The stress that had once filled the air slowly faded, replaced by a sense of belonging. At home, Kareem's own family also began noticing the difference. His children, who had once felt distant from their father, now saw him sitting at the table, listening to their stories, and even helping them with their homework. His wife, who had long carried the silence of his absence, now saw warmth in his eyes again. One evening, she said softly, "You're different these days. What happened?" Kareem smiled, thinking of Ali. "I met a friend," he replied simply. Ali continued to visit him regularly. Sometimes they colored together, sometimes they shared snacks, and sometimes they just talked about the small things in life. Ali once told Kareem about how he liked to watch the stars at night and how he believed that stars listened to wishes. Kareem, who had once spent his nights staring at spreadsheets, found himself one evening standing on his balcony, looking up at the stars, wondering when he had last wished for something that wasn't related to money or success. The boy's innocence was quietly reshaping his world. One day, Kareem decided to visit Ali's home. It was a small, modest place, nothing like the tall buildings he was used to. Ali's parents greeted him nervously, surprised to see a man like him at their door. But Kareem smiled warmly and told them how much their son had changed his life. Tears filled their eyes as they listened. They explained how hard they worked to give Ali a better future and how guilty they sometimes felt for not being able to spend enough time with him. Kareem understood their struggle deeply. "You are doing your best," he told them gently. "Your son is a gift, not only to you but also to me. He reminded me of things I had forgotten." From that day on, Kareem made it a point to support Ali's family in small ways. He never treated them with pity but with respect. He helped them where he could, ensuring that they had what they needed without ever making them feel less. The miracle of this friendship spread quietly, touching every part of Kareem's life. His employees were happier, his family was closer, and even his own heart felt lighter. He realized that success did not only mean having the biggest company or the most money. True success was being remembered as someone who cared, someone who made life better for others. Ali, with his small shoes and innocent smile, had become the heart of his story. And every time he knocked on that heavy office door, Karim felt grateful that he had opened it that very first day. It was strange and beautiful how a child could teach a man lessons that no university, no boardroom, and no business deal could ever teach. Karim now believed that sometimes the smallest hands hold the greatest power, not the power of wealth or influence, but the power of love, innocence, and friendship. And as the sun set one evening, while Karim watched Ali drawing yet another picture of a smiling sun, he realized something important. The boy had not only become his friend, he had become his teacher. The weeks continued to pass, and what had started as a single knock on a closed office door had grown into a bond that touched every part of Karim's life. Ali had become more than just a visitor, he had become a part of Karim's heart, a small light that changed how he looked at the world. One Friday morning, Karim woke up earlier than usual. The city outside was still quiet, the streets slowly filling with life. He sat by his window, holding a cup of tea, and thought about how different he felt now compared to a few months ago. Back then, his mornings began with lists of tasks and worries about profits. Now, his first thought was often of Ali and the warmth the boy had brought into his days. At the office, Karim's employees noticed that their boss had changed in ways they never imagined. He now spoke kindly, listened carefully, and often encouraged them to spend time with their families. He had become someone they no longer feared but respected deeply. The company, too, seemed to flourish in unexpected ways. Projects were handled with more cooperation, ideas flowed freely, and people felt motivated not out of fear but out of inspiration. Karim often wondered how such a small child had managed to make such a big difference. It was almost as if Ali's presence had planted a seed inside his heart, a seed of compassion that kept growing and spreading. One afternoon, Karim sat across from Ali in his office. The boy was drawing another picture, his tongue slightly sticking out as he concentrated. When he finished, he held it up proudly. It was a picture of two figures holding hands under a bright sun. One figure was small, the other taller, but both had wide smiles on their faces. "This is you and me," Ali explained. "We're friends, and the sun is happy because we're happy." Karim looked at the drawing, and his eyes grew moist. He carefully placed the picture inside a folder where he kept all of Ali's drawings. "It's beautiful, Ali," he said softly. "I will keep it safe always." Ali beamed, pleased that his friend valued his little creation. For him, it was just a picture, but for Karim, it was a reminder of the miracle that had entered his life. That evening, Karim decided to do something he had not done in many years. He took his children to the park. They ran, laughed, and played football together as the sun set behind the trees. His daughter held his hand tightly as they walked back, and his son leaned against him, smiling. Karim's wife walked beside him, her face glowing with quiet happiness. For the first time in a very long time, Karim felt whole. Later that night, as he tucked his children into bed, he realized that Ali's friendship had not only touched him but had also repaired the broken connections within his own family. The small knock of a child had reminded him of the doors he had left closed at home for years. Now, those doors were opening again. The miracle of friendship was not only in the bond between him and Ali but also in how that bond reached everyone around him. His family felt it, his employees felt it, even strangers who crossed paths with him noticed it. He had become softer, kinder, and more present in each moment. One particular day, Karim invited Ali and his parents to his home for dinner. Ali's parents were hesitant at first, unsure of how to accept such an invitation from a man of Karim's status. But Karim welcomed them warmly, not as a CEO but as a friend. The evening was filled with laughter, stories, and the sound of children playing together. Ali's parents, who had always carried the burden of guilt for not giving enough time to their son, were relieved to see the joy in his eyes. Over dinner, Karim said something that surprised them. "Your son has changed my life," he admitted openly. "He reminded me of what really matters. He brought me back to my own family. He gave me back my heart." Ali's mother's eyes filled with tears, and his father nodded silently, touched by the sincerity in Karim's words. They realized that their son's simple request for friendship had created ripples far beyond what they could imagine. In the months that followed, Karim began supporting not only Ali's family but also other families in need. He created programs in his company that helped employees balance work and family life. He started community projects to support children's education, remembering how Ali had spoken about loneliness. He wanted no child to feel forgotten the way Ali sometimes had. People began calling Karim a man of vision, but he knew the truth. His vision had not come from business schools or board meetings. It had come from a 4-year-old boy who had dared to knock on his door and ask, "Can you be my friend?" Karim often shared the story whenever he spoke at public events. He never mentioned Ali's name, protecting his privacy, but he always told the world about the knock that changed his life. He wanted people to understand that miracles don't always arrive with noise or grandeur. Sometimes, miracles arrive quietly, on small feet, with innocent eyes and honest words. One evening, as Karim sat in his office with Ali by his side, he asked softly, "Ali, do you know what you did?" Ali looked up in confusion. "What do you mean?" "You changed me," Karim said with a smile. "Before you, I was always busy. I forgot to laugh, I forgot to play, I forgot to love the people close to me. But you reminded me. You brought happiness back to my life." Ali tilted his head, then grinned. "That's what friends do, Karim. They make each other happy." Karim reached across the table and held the boy's small hand gently. "Yes, Ali. That is exactly what friends do." The miracle of that friendship was not a single event. It was not just about a child walking into a CEO's office. The miracle was in the way it spread, how it softened a hard heart, rebuilt a family, and touched an entire workplace. It was in the way it reminded everyone who heard the story that no one is too powerful, too busy, or too important to need a friend. Years later, whenever Karim looked back, he would always remember that day, the day when a 4-year-old knocked on his door with nothing to offer except pure friendship. That day had been the turning point of his life. It had been the day when success stopped meaning numbers and started meaning love, kindness, and human connection. And so, the miracle lived on, not just in Karim's heart but in the lives of everyone who felt the warmth of the change Ali had brought.